Today, we're diving into a story that's, well, it's just incredible. It sits right at the intersection of a terrifying medical crisis, a surgeon who seems to have vanished, and a faith healer's absolutely startling prophecies.
Let's start with a moment that is absolutely chilling. Imagine being Sherito Prieto, standing in a Sydney hospital on March 8, 2021, and a nurse says this to you. Her husband, Pedro, was in the ICU, and this was the reality she was being told to accept.
So how on earth did things get so bad so fast? This was a full-blown life-or-death situation that just exploded over the course of a few hours. I mean, look at this timeline. The speed is terrifying. At 1 in the morning, Pedro has what feels like a stroke-level headache. Just 30 minutes later, they're at the hospital, and a CT scan confirms a ruptured brain aneurysm, a bleed in his brain. It's one of the most critical emergencies you can have. By 5 a.m., he's in the ICU, his veins reportedly collapsing as doctors are scrambling to prep him for emergency brain surgery.
Okay, so you've got the medical team rushing around, right? The whole hospital machinery is in motion. But at the exact same time, a completely different kind of intervention was already happening. Right there, in the absolute chaos of the emergency room, Sherito does something pretty unexpected. She makes a desperate call halfway around the world to a man in the Philippines they call Kuya Nars, a faith healer named Narciso Olalo.
So, a few hours go by, and Olalo calls her back, but she wasn't about to get the reassurance she was probably hoping for. Instead, he tells her about a divine message he says he received months ago but never shared, and the message was just blunt. Pedro was destined to die.
So let's just recap. You've got the doctors giving a grim medical prognosis and a faith healer delivering a prophetic warning of certain death. The odds are just completely and totally stacked against him. But what happened next? Well, it seemed to defy everyone.
This is where the story takes a really strange turn. Pedro was actually awake right before his 6-hour operation. He remembers the surgical team coming in, and it was led by this tall, slender man with long, white, curly hair. The thing is, Pedro had never seen the surgeon before, and even though he searched the hospital for weeks after he recovered, he never saw him again.
And the results of that mysterious surgery? The difference between what was supposed to happen and what actually happened is just staggering. Doctors told Pedro that 80% of patients either die or are permanently disabled. But Pedro? He was responsive right after the surgery. He was walking in 6 days, and he was out of the hospital in 15 days.
And that 80% number isn't just a general statistic. His own doctors told him straight up that in their entire careers, he was the first patient they had ever seen recover from this specific brutal surgery with absolutely zero damage. None.
You can just imagine how shocked the staff was. The hospital's directing doctor literally saw Pedro walking the halls doing laps and just said to him, "You look like $1 million."
Okay, so this extraordinary against-all-odds outcome, it just forces you to ask the question, who is this faith healer at the center of the story, Narciso Olalo?
Well, he describes himself as an astral healer. He says this term was given to him to define his calling. And he describes it as a divine gift, one that allows him to heal people, sure, but also to see their entire life story, their sins, and even to see events before they happen.
At the very core of his teachings are these 3 principles, which he calls the 3 Ps, and these are presented as the non-negotiable path for anyone who wants healing. First, pagsisisi, repentance. Second, pagbabago, renewal of your life. And third, paniniwala, a complete and total belief in God.
And look, Pedro's story, as amazing as it is, it's not a one-off. The source materials are filled with these testimonies. We're talking about a guy in Australia whose severe diabetes markers just plummeted, or a woman who struggled for months to get pregnant and then says she conceived just 20 minutes after Aldo prayed over her. Story after story.
But the claims surrounding Olalo go way beyond just individual healing. His followers also believe he has visions of the future on a massive scale.
And this is really crucial. His followers have actually compiled a record of messages that he posted online. They point to these posts as proof that he foresaw some of the Philippines' biggest national tragedies, things like the devastating Typhoon Yolanda or the Battle of Marawi weeks and sometimes even months before they happen.
So you have this miraculous healing, these prophecies, all these personal testimonies. What's the thread that ties all of these incredible claims together? Well, throughout all the source material, Olalo is really consistent on one point. He claims the power isn't his.
The message he says he received from God is crystal clear. He is just the instrument, the facilitator. The actual cure, he says, comes from a higher power, and it's activated by the person's own faith.
So what do we make of all this? We have a survival story that seems to defy medical science, a surgeon who might as well have been a ghost, and a healer with these seemingly prophetic visions. Whether you choose to see it as a medical marvel, a miracle, or a massive coincidence, every part of this story leads back to one central thing: the undeniable power of belief.
The story of Pedro Preto and Narciso Olalo really doesn't give us any easy answers, does it? It doesn't wrap up in a neat little bow. Instead, it just leaves us with this big question to chew on. Where do we draw the line between the known world of medicine, the possibility of a miracle, and the incredible, undeniable power of what we choose to believe?